Hi, Dr. J. It's me, Jeanette, doing my other video for the assignment that's due today. I was thinking that I was just going to do one video for both the main assignment and the applied assignment. I don't know if I've been doing it wrong the whole time, but I'm just going to submit one video, both for main and applied assignment. And so the first one that I'm going to do is going to be for the main assignment, which was to skim the Brown et al. Article and also to choose one of the articles between Collins and Spink as well. And so it says to briefly describe the Brown article and discuss how their findings differ from the consistent social psychologists. Most people have a need to belong in a strong affiliation. So in this article from Brown, when the need to belong goes wrong, it talks about the difference between social anhedonia and social anxiety. And so in social anhedonia, there sometimes can be an interpretation that because you have social anhedonia, there's some negative, they call it the negative trait associated with not wanting to socialize, but it's more so just kind of wanting to be on your own, and there not being a correlation between having social anhedonia and that is related to having social anxiety. If anything, that does not relate to one another. More so with social anhedonia, it's just kind of wanting to be on your own and not really having a need to be amongst other people. And if you are among other people, it's more so not really wanting to engage, and mostly because you just want to keep to yourself. Versus with social anxiety, it's more so of like, I would say kind of like a fear or phobia of being amongst people. And in social anhedonia, there is that fear is not there. And so to me, this article kind of has like a contradiction, right, to how social psychologists say that, people find it like there's a strong need to belong and to be affiliated with somebody. And clearly those who have social anhedonia do not fall in that category. And so this really makes me think about those who, I guess if you want to call it, our homebodies, or who don't really are more introverted and don't really like to have a big circle. And I think there could be a lot of things that would contribute to this, as far as with personality, past history, characteristics, or just, how you grew up, culture. There's a lot of things that I think could also play into part with social anhedonia and social anxiety as well. But more so, I don't know why, I always lean more towards social anhedonia. It actually made me kind of reflect on myself, because I've never been really the type to want to be in super large groups. I mean, obviously being, going to a concert or anything like that, I mean, that's like something different. But as far as like having like a large group of friends and always being in large groups and, big birthday gatherings, or for example, it makes me think of like people who have a big group of friends, and let's say it's someone's birthday, and there's like 20-30 people that are out to dinner, and those are close friends. And so as being someone who kind of, I guess I would say I fit myself into that social anhedonia, where I don't really like to be around a lot of people. I prefer to be within my own space and just with a short number of people. It makes me think about how I don't have that need to belong or be affiliated. I do think though, and I wonder what your thoughts are, if someone would develop this based on past history. So once again, let me say, like, for example, if I were to use myself. So growing up, being biracial, it was very hard for me to feel like I belonged to one specific group. So I wasn't like Black enough for the African American, and I didn't feel myself that I would be Latin enough to be friends with the Latin group in growing up in high school. So that feeling of not really being able to belong kind of made me not want to be around a whole bunch of people because of that fear that I might not be accepted. But I don't necessarily feel anxious about being in a group. It's just more so like I'm comfortable just being on my own or with a very, very small group, and don't have to worry about feeling like, am I going to be accepted, or am I going to be looked at in a certain way or not, based on who I am. So I do think about that when it comes to the articles. And so moving on to, summarizing Collins or Spink, I looked at, I believe, I looked at the article of Collins. So, social determinants of health among, adults after they left foster care. And this is interesting to me. And also made me reflect a little more on the previous article of social anhedonia and social anxiety, because I think that for foster youth, this would be something significant. Basically, because of their past history of trauma and having to be in foster care, depending on what the stability was like in foster care, what social skills were obtained or not obtained, how were they perceived by others because they are foster children, and like reading one of the articles in regards to like healthcare, how they were shunned, or how because they had state insurance or something like that, or how there was a description there of someone saying that when he was in an appointment and the physician was mostly wanting to talk about his childhood and all that type of stuff, and that wasn't what he was there for. And when that was voiced, it was not taken in a positive way. So I feel like if experiences like that would happen consistently to, if I'm looking at foster youth, then that for sure would create both social anxiety and social anhedonia, because it's the fear of not really being accepted for who you are, and best to kind of keep to yourself or in a very small circle. So I think that kind of demystifies that need of how we want to belong and need to be affiliated, because there's some who don't really have that need. I think there's a need of acceptance from almost everybody. But belonging is an interesting statement, because it's like belonging to what specifically, the way I look at that. And it says, reflect upon when it is that people might conform to social norms, when they might not. And I think I kind of touched base on that with number 5. I think it's, I think it all depends as we go through the process of aging. So it makes me think of adolescence and how adolescents want to be accepted. And for example, the social norm would be to have like the newest pair of shoes and be cool. And so you want to be viewed as cool too. So then it's like you try to strive to be like everyone else and make sure that you have the cool shoes as well, so that you're not looked at as a social outcast. And so I think, because that was another thing, like for self-reflect, I remember experiencing that in high school, wanting to make sure that, my dress was up to par. But then it was like, once I got to college and was like, oh my God, people are like in their sweatpants and their pajama bottoms, their hair is up, nobody cares like what you have on, because everyone's there for a sole purpose, which is to get in, get out, get your education, and keep it moving was totally an eye opener for me, because it made me feel like I didn't really, if I was putting effort into myself, it was because that's what I wanted to do and not because that's what I felt that I needed to do. So that takes me to that. For the applied assignment, so reading the article for Levine and briefly summarizing the major findings. This was really interesting to me because it had, various studies about, the bystander effect. And what classifies those who will intervene and what doesn't. And so this was basically breaking it down, versus gender, if there was something salient, like for example, belonging to the same group. And I would look at that as even being like belonging to the same like racial group. Also, if this was like amongst strangers or amongst a group of friends, what would be the level to which people would want to intervene in a situation. And I think that this kind of really also depends a lot. It made me think of 3 different things when we talk about the bystander effect. 2 very recent things and one that happens a lot that I see. And this made me think of, for example, I don't know if you're aware, but when they had that big fight at Disneyland several months ago, and how this was a family, but it was a family of African Americans who, were fighting each other, and the family member who was male was like punching the females in the face. And the video that surfaced just showed, there's hundreds and thousands of people at Disneyland and thousands that are there spectating. And this is going on for quite some time. And it's like, is anybody going to intervene? And noticing that no one's really intervening. And then it goes into thinking like, what clicks in the mind of the person to be like, should I or should I not be the first one to intervene? Are others going to intervene? Or what the repercussion is going to be if I do intervene? So it made me think of that scenario. It also made me think of that I think he was a teenager who in the Bronx was killed by a group of gang members. And he was stabbed several times at the bodega. And he ran to the hospital, which was 2 blocks away from the bodega corner store where he had gotten assaulted. And people were seeing this kid run, bleeding profusely. And he ended up passing out maybe like half a block before the hospital. And no one doing anything while this kid was running, bleeding profusely. And so he died. He passed out, but died because he was unable to make it to the hospital. And we're talking about 2 blocks away. So it made me think about, what goes on in the mind of those who are seeing certain situations and what prevents them from, making an attempt to help. And then the third thing that it made me think about is like, when there's a car accident on the freeway, and it's like, sometimes there's an accident and people are just driving by, and sometimes there's an accident and there's like 4 or 5 cars on the side. And those are not cars of people who were part of the accident. They're people who are, who were a bystander or saw the accident, or, happen to pass by and decide to pull over. Maybe someone's in the medical field and want to offer help. But it's like, so that thinking that happens that, okay, this person stopped. So then other people feel then comfortable to then stop and render their services as well. So I think that's really kind of fascinating as to the ripple effect that happens and the hesitation that happens, like to be the first person to intervene in a situation. And certainly I could understand, like the article was talking about in the different studies, male versus female, groups of affiliation of friends versus strangers, with male and female, is it female situation and a male's going to intervene, but if there's other males, then that one male won't. as well. So I think that that's really interesting. As far as discussing an intervention, I don't really know, have a response for that. I mean, it says something about describe how the specific findings related to bystander intervention should be applied. I'm not really sure how to answer that question because I'm still pondering on this final project. I think I might want to think about that a little bit more. I'm not exactly sure where I want my final project to go. It's either something with like foster youth transitioning, or domestic violence. So I've been doing a lot of work lately with that, and looking at how this bystander effect in domestic violence can be somehow some intervention created, in regards to, from thinking right now, trying to process this, like if you know that someone is in a super abusive relationship, how would you intervene, which is a little bit different than like if you were witnessing like someone being beaten or battered at that time. Would you intervene? Or for example, if you've seen like someone beating their child in public, like would you intervene? So I have to process that a little bit more, because I'm not sure my direction of my project. So I might have to email you later about what I want to do. But that's what I have so far for both the applied and main assignment. If this video is way too long and you prefer that I split it up into like I have done in the past, please let me know. And I'll see you in a little bit. Thank you.